It's Mazzy, and welcome back to another. It's the Music Stupid. I think this is number 28. I think. And actually, there's a song. Okay, you'll see. There's a 28 song, 28 connected song in this. And that's just coincidental, seriously, folks. I want to start out with an album from 1972, came out mid-year, and it was almost like this transitional project album between one of my very favorite albums by Pink Floyd, Metal, with that great epic Echoes. I love that record. And of course, the 1973 Dark Side of the Moon, which we all know is bigger than anything ever made in the history of this planet and this universe. Literally goes out beyond the dark side of the moon, and that's obscured by clouds. I fell in love with this album right when I got it, and in a way, it was, even though it's a soundtrack, they recorded over 2 days in France, like while they were on tour. It's from the Barbet Schroeder film, Barbet Schroeder. He's part of that, the French New Wave directors of the 60s. However, I believe he's from Switzerland, Iranian-born Switzerland. He would go on to make some huge Hollywood films in the 80s, like Single White Female. Then he went on to direct Barfly with Mickey Rourke about Bukowski, and A Reversal of Fortune with Jeremy Irons. And so he had a lot the hit-making things later. But I did see La Vallée in a theater years later, in an independent theater in San Francisco, and it's these mountain people. It's an adventure. Not a great movie, but of course I knew this record so well by then. That's the reason I really wanted to see it. But it's an interesting film. Anyway, let's get back to this album. This is that stopgap in a way, a project. They worked also on a soundtrack more several years earlier. So I really like how they compose and the sounds they get and the songs they work in for film, for cinema. I wish they would release a standalone version of them live at Pompeii, that great concert, because it's really a wonderful record. Now, the catchy song on here, or the quote closest to a hit they had, is called Free For. Very catchy, very acoustic based. There's some instrumental mood things on here and chanting from, in essence, like the Mudmen that are in here. But I just love this record. The first time I ever saw Pink Floyd was late this year, so they did a little bit from this, but I think I saw them, it was either September and October. They played 2 nights at Winterland in San Francisco, and they played the entire Echoes from Metal. Plus, they played the entire, what would be their next album, Dark Side of the Moon. So I got a preview of Dark Side. Anybody who saw them in late 72 into 73 heard Dark Side of the Moon. We didn't know it, but it was really, really cool. That's when they had the big gong, but that was a great time to see Pink Floyd in a place like Winterland that holds 5,000, 5,500 people or so. Of course, it would have been great seeing them at the UFO Club. They were the house band for a while in the 60s in London. But I want to start out with this album because I think this is one of their strongest albums. And a lot of people seem to kind of like put it aside, almost like it's a secondary project or a secondary talent or quality because it was done so fast, and it's just they toss it as a soundtrack. But Obscured by Clouds from the Barbet Schroeder film La Vallée. Next, another misunderstood album at the time, and it's become an amazing cult album, and it finally gained popularity like literally decades later. And this is the 1974 album by Gene Clark, no other. Of course, Gene Clark was an original member of the Byrds. He was the one that wrote the most original songs at the very beginning of the Byrds. So he made the money where the others, he was driving the sports car, and the others weren't because they were covering Dylan songs and Pete Seeger songs and the whole folk scene going on. Of course, that would change. And unfortunately, he would leave the group after he started writing 8 Miles High. I think he started that, and the rest of the group finished it off. And during, was it Fifth Dimension, or Younger Than Yesterday, Fifth Dimension, he leaves the group. And he does an interesting career move by, doing for Columbia. the album with the Gosden brothers, and of course later Dillard and Clark. But this is an unusual record. This was produced by Thomas Jefferson Kay, and I know David Geffen did not like this record. This was on Asylum Records. He had this whole glammed out thing going, which is very unusual and uncharacteristic for Gene Clark. Look at that. Look at that. But the artwork on this, the music, there's certain mood to this record. This is an amazing record. Dare I say his best album, his most unusual album, less in the country folk vein, but it's a really great sounding record. I know they started out, I think there's only, 8 songs on here? 8 songs, and they're kind of long-ish songs. But again, this record bombed at the time, but since then it's been resurrected and it has found an audience. There was an expanded, I believe 4AD put out the box set, which I have, extended version with a lot of extra stuff that most people don't need, but it's still, again, this is one of my favorite albums. And my buddy and I, Vernon, at the time, just not soon after this, maybe it was a year or two, we saw him play twice, like 2 nights in a row, I believe, unless I'm misremembering this. We saw him at Berkeley Square, which was in by the University of California in Berkeley, play live. The place was maybe half full. And then up in Cotati, up on the way to Santa Rosa, we went again the next night or two, whenever it was, and he was fabulous. But this was, again, a very unusual album, a wonderful record. It's just great. Magnificent ethereal vocals in the back, a little dirge-light sound, a very dark album in some ways. And in fact, some of these songs, or at least one song, as I recall, was covered with this Mortal Coil, that sort of semi-collective supergroup from 4AD on one of those records, and I love that. I'm sticking with some classic stuff, but again, another band. This could be these artists don't get enough love today. Whack-A-Mole. Oh, it's not a Whack-A-Mole. I'm sorry. This is The Music Stupid, because it's about the music, not the pressing, not the audiophile or not audiophile. It's The Music Stupid. Kick it in your head, Maslow. Stick that in your head. It's the music. And this is this wonderful album, John Barleycorn Must Die by Traffic. And this is the closest they have to a folk rock album. They do the traditional song, John Barleycorn, which is a traditional Old English folk song. And there's a 6-minute, 20-second version of it that Stevie Winwood sings, acoustic-based. And this is pretty much when Traffic was a trio after Dave Mason leaves the group too. And it's a folk rock record, and it's one of the best folk rock records of the 1970s. And it produced by Chris Blackwell, of course, who founded Island Records and brought us all this great reggae music, Bob Marley, all that stuff, Island Records, Mango, too. Opens up with Glad, this wonderful instrumental that Steve Winwood wrote. You got Jim Capaldi, who's a great singer, the drummer, percussionist on here, and he sings all those Traffic albums and just had another great sound. A great band. Again, with Dave Mason, they had that little different voice with Steve Winwood's really soulful voice. Of course, you all know he had his huge comeback in the 1980s. Huge, bigger than ever. And of course, he started very young with the Spencer Davis Group, Give Me Some Lovin', and I'm a Man. But I think this is a fabulous album. Every song on it is wonderful. And again, it has this folk rock feel that the other, British folk rock, that the other albums by Traffic just don't have. So it's The Music Stupid. This is incredible music. And these records aren't expensive, so I would suggest highly, if you like folk rock, British folk rock, you like the Fairport Conventions. Again, it's not exactly in that. It's a little more rock-based, soulful rock-based in a way, but if you like those bands, Steel Eye Span, you'll like this. I mean, and this is even more, quote, accessible. Again, it's subjective, but a great album, great album. Okay, another album a lot of people don't even know about is this, and this is Tell 'Em I'm Gone by Yousef. And Yousef, obviously, is the artist formerly known as Cat Stevens. And this is a brilliant comeback in essence. I mean, he never really went away, but he put out a number of albums under the name Yousef. He became Muslim. He changed his name to Yousef from Cat Stevens. In a way, he pushed aside that side of his career, his history, his songwriting. But over the last decade or so, he's kind of embraced the songs of Cat Stevens again. He's accepted being and covering some of those songs again, from Catch Bullet 4, Teaser and the Firecat, T for the Tillerman, and all those great songs that were used, some of them used in some new songs on that great cult film Harold and Maude. And this album is a stunner. Again, it sounds like the best, in fact, better than Cat Stevens albums like Catch Bullet 4. After that, those records, I think, in the 70s started falling apart and got very disjointed from my point of view. This record was produced by Rick Rubin, and it was mixed by Paul Samuel Smith. And Paul Samuel Smith was a producer who worked with Cat Stevens back on those classic 70s records. And this is a stunner of an album. It's got the folk roots again. His voice is strong as ever. The acoustic guitars are wonderfully recorded. You know how Rick Rubin works with Johnny Cash and Petty. It has that sound. There are some Middle Eastern chants on one or two tracks, and that just adds to the appeal of this song. There's a great cover of a wonderful song that I love by Procol Harum, The Devil Came from Kansas. It's just a wonderful, wonderful record. Tinariwen appears on it as well. So Tinariwen, I know I'm mispronouncing that great sort of desert sand, Arabic guitar-based musical outfit. But it's just a really, really wonderful, wonderful music. And of course, Cat Stevens on the cover, Yousef on the cover, lyrics inside, and your album credits here as well as sort of a wonderful introduction talking about where he is now in the music based on this album. But I think this is an album that needs more love. And if you do like those Cat Stevens albums of the early 1970s, you're not going to be disappointed with this. It's probably the most, this and the follow-up that Paul Samuel Smith produced, the sort of the children's album, is really beautiful. And it fits right in there. It would have been not unusual to have this come right after Teaser and the Firecat all those 50 years ago now. And again, he sounds great still in with this album. So fantastic record. Lastly, I want to showcase this album, Steppenwolf II. Of course, a lot of people are probably more partial and know the first album with Born to Be Wild and Goddamn the Pusher Man. That is a fabulous album. I would argue these two, this equals it. These two first albums are their brilliant, perfect records. They're so good. Both have the metallic cover. This opens up with the song Mars Bonfire Road. I love that name. I thought that's the coolest name. And it's called Faster Than the Speed of Life, which doesn't have the typical John Kay vocal. I like that they kind of alternate a little bit on that. Of course, John Kay is all over this, and that's he's the sound of Steppenwolf that we all know and we all love. It goes into Tighten Up Your Wig, which is kind of funky. There's a little bit of a psychedelic side to this on a couple of tracks, or Baroque psychedelia with a Spiritual Fantasy, a John Kay song that has like the string quartets, like an Eleanor Rigby type of thing. And it's just a gorgeous psychedelic piece with John Kay's amazing vocal. Don't Step on the Grass, Sam, that has this great riff, ending up with a toilet flushing down the goods when their apartment or their house is being raided by the cops. And of course, opens up side 2 with a song called 28. She's 28 years old tonight. That was my reference of earlier of the number 28 in this. It's the Music Stupid. Of course, Magic Carpet Ride, the hit. That's one of their great songs as well. One of the great singles as well. And just a lot of great things. Resurrection, Reflections. This is a fantastic record, a great rock and roll record This is sort of hard rock, psychedelia, a little Baroque thrown in, and it's a perfect record of the time. I believe this was 1969. This is a really, really wonderful white label promo version of this record, which, you know, you don't see very often at this point of view. ABC Dunhill Records. Just love this record. So, Steppenwolf, It's the Music Stupid, number 28. Mazzy loves you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.